Okay, let's get into this. For today's deep dive, we're stepping away from, technology or economics.
Hmm.
We're looking at something much more foundational, character. And we're doing it through the early life of a figure named Anvika, using the source Anvika one page at a time.
Right. And our mission here isn't just to tell a story. We're really trying to use this life as a kind of blueprint
A blueprint for what exactly?
for how things like discipline, focus, real internal strength, how they're actually forged. And the source argues it's not in these perfect, stable environments.
No, quite the opposite.
Exactly. It's often in places defined by scarcity, and this is the critical part, by constant change, constant transience. We're looking for the raw ingredients of resilience.
And the source just dives right in by challenging, our whole idea of how important lives begin. It says some lives begin with celebrations, others begin quietly.
And Anvika's is one of the quiet ones.
Very quiet. It says her life began without announcements. No parties, no framed photos on the wall, none of that. It's almost like it's defined by what wasn't there.
And that quiet, that absence of noise, is the whole point. It's the first layer. If you start quietly, you're not conditioned to look for external validation.
You're not waiting for applause.
You're not waiting for applause.
Yeah.
The whole dynamic shifts inward from day one. It forces this immediate self-reliance because you're not expecting the world to even notice you.
Which is a perfect lead-in to the first major theme from the source, something we're calling the architecture of borrowed roofs.
Right.
Because when you look at her childhood, the one thing that just jumps out is that she never had one single fixed home.
That's it. The idea of stability, like a permanent address, it just wasn't there. Her childhood was this constant movement.
Bouncing between places.
Yeah, from a relative's house to a neighbor's, sometimes even a distant acquaintance. And what's really fascinating is why they helped.
Yeah.
The source is clear. It was a kind of chain of reciprocity.
They helped because they had once been helped themselves.
Exactly. A chain of necessity, not always, a deep personal connection.
So she's living this high-stakes game of musical chairs, basically. But here's the paradox that the source really highlights.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of these temporary homes was kind. There was no cruelty. But that very kindness, because it was under a borrowed roof, it carried this silent message.
A powerful underlying message. And that message was crystal clear. You are here temporarily.
Yes.
Think about what that does to a child's psyche. The roof is borrowed, which means the knowledge that you have to pack light, leave no trace, and above all, not be an inconvenience.
That's the rent.
That's the rent. It becomes this unspoken requirement to be welcome. So this temporary state, it isn't just waiting, it's an active training ground.
That's where self-reliance stops being a virtue and starts being a survival skill.
It becomes a necessity. You learn very, very early that the only thing that's truly yours, truly permanent, is what you carry inside yourself.
That's fascinating, but doesn't that also risk creating just deep anxiety? I mean, if you're always aware you're a temporary guest, an imposition, how does that become discipline instead of just, resentment or fear?
That is a great question. And the source implies the answer is in turning that anxiety into something useful.
Okay.
If you're anxious about overstaying your welcome, you become hyper-efficient at minimizing your own footprint. That forced self-regulation, it starts to replace the anxiety with a sense of control.
Ah, so you shift from worrying if you can stay.
To focusing on the actions that ensure you can stay. And that leads us straight into our second section, learning the weight of limits, or as the source puts it, discipline without instruction.
And this, for me, this is the absolute core of the deep dive. These are the traits Anvika learned without anyone ever sitting her down for a lecture.
Exactly. She wasn't told to be disciplined. The environment demanded it. Scarcity was the teacher.
So give us some of those concrete examples from the source, the behaviors that really stood out to you.
Okay, so take something as simple as waking up early.
Okay.
Right. It wasn't because of an alarm clock. It wasn't a rule. The source says it was because space was shared. In a borrowed house, space is a premium. It's a limited resource.
And you learn to get out of the way.
You learn that if you manage your own time and your own space before everyone else needs the communal areas, you're proving your value. You're a low-impact guest.
That makes so much sense. It's the ultimate good house guest mentality, but it's not for a weekend. It's your entire way of life. And that detail about her folding her bedding before anyone else was awake, that's not just about being tidy.
No, it's preemptive resource management. And it goes beyond just physical space. The source notes she learned to speak less and listen more.
Which is where observation comes in.
Observation became her first skill. That's the direct quote. When your whole world is constantly changing, new house, new host, new unspoken rules, you can't afford to just react.
You have to anticipate.
You have to. Observation is how you download the rules of engagement before you accidentally break them. That kind of focus, that attention to detail, is foundational for success in any field. It's critical thinking, but born from pure necessity.
I love that. The idea that a high-level cognitive skill was actually just a survival mechanism for her. And the source links this directly to her understanding of value, too.
Yes, to the weight of limits.
Hmm.
It argues that Anvika understood the weight of time better than most adults,
Why?
because it wasn't this endless thing she could just waste. Same with attention, same with money. If the host's attention is a scarce resource, you learn to say what you need clearly and quickly.
And if money is scarce?
The cost of something frivolous isn't just a number. It represents a necessary resource that is now gone, forever.
It makes the abstract idea of value incredibly real. The weight of those limits forces you to constantly prioritize, which is, well, that's the definition of focus, isn't it?
Absolutely. The lessons she's learning are the complete opposite of, our modern culture of abundance, where you could be a little sloppy with your time, your words, your attention.
Because you assume there's always more tomorrow.
Right. For her, tomorrow wasn't a guarantee. So every single resource had this incredible weight.
So now let's bring her parents into this. Section 3, the parental model. It seems like they just reinforce this whole quiet atmosphere.
They did. According to the source, they never complained. Not about the struggle, the moving, the uncertainty, nothing.
They just carried their worries quietly.
That's the phrase. They modeled emotional regulation not by talking about it, but just by not dramatizing their own situation. They showed her that struggle was a private burden you manage internally, not something you display to get pity.
That sounds like such a heavy emotional load for a family to carry.
It is heavy, no question.
Yeah.
But it also provided a kind of anchor, an incredible model of stability in a world that had none. Their quietness was the one consistent thing in her life.
And out of all that silence, all that effort, the source says there was really only one sentence they repeated over and over.
A mantra, almost.
Study well.
And this simple phrase might be the biggest psychological insight in the whole book, because the authors don't define it as just advice. They call it hope disguised as instruction.
Okay, let's unpack that because that's a really powerful idea. What's the difference between simple advice and hope disguised as instruction?
Well, simple advice is transactional, right? If you study, you'll get good grades.
Cause and effect.
Right. But hope disguised as instruction is foundational. It's saying, look, we know everything is fragile and uncertain right now, but this one action studying, this is the key. This is how you build a future where you are in control. It's your only way out of this temporary state.
So the instruction is the how.
The instruction is the method, the discipline. But the motivation behind it is this desperate, powerful hope for the future. It's what gives their quiet struggle meaning.
And that focus on the future explains her response, which was just consistency.
Exactly. She wasn't trying to be number one in every single exam. She didn't demand attention. The source says she simply kept showing up.
Consistency was her weapon.
It was. And that silent commitment perfectly mirrors her parents' quiet persistence. They were consistently managing the worry, providing survival. So she responded with consistent, persistent effort in her studies. This perfect, quiet feedback loop.
Which sets the stage for this really critical pivot point in Section 4, the shift to purposeful thinking. This is where all that internal mental wiring forged by necessity starts to show up on the outside, specifically at school.
Yes, this is when she starts to notice she sees the world differently than her peers. And it really comes to a head in, of all places, art class.
The contrast there is so telling. While all the other kids are drawing, the usual things, flowers, landscapes, a nice house,
Pretty things.
pretty decorative things, Anvika was sketching objects.
She was drawing tools, functional shapes, little machines she was imagining could make life easier. Her drawings were not about aesthetics.
Yeah.
They were about function, efficiency. The source says her work was not decorative, it was purposeful. This is that mind, trained by scarcity, expressing itself creatively.
Why draw a flower when you could design a better latch for a door?
Exactly. You're not imagining a prettier world, you're imagining a more efficient one, a less precarious one. And this mindset leads to that pivotal moment with her teacher.
Right, the teacher.
The teacher noticed, paused by her desk, longer than usual, looking at these sketches of, gears and levers and imagined mechanisms, and then just says, very softly,
Don't stop thinking like this.
just that. And the source's analysis of that one sentence is everything. It wasn't praise.
It was permission.
That distinction is so critical. Praise is external. It's affirmation for meeting some kind of conventional expectation. Good job, you drew a nice flower. Permission, in this context, is validation. It's someone in authority saying that her unique, practical, non-decorative way of seeing the world was okay. That it was valuable. It was the moment she was given the space to keep building that internal architecture without the pressure to conform and draw pretty scenery.
Wow. So it basically validates everything she'd learned under all those borrowed roofs.
Yes, it tells her the way you think about utility and purpose and efficiency is not just acceptable, it's important.
It's like an external compass finally confirming her internal one.
It is. It lets all those quiet, consistent habits finally gain some intellectual confidence. It's the outside world finally acknowledging the strength she had been building in silence for years.
So if we synthesize all of this, the constant moving, the self-taught discipline, the parent's single instruction, and then this final permission, what's the essence of Anvika's foundation?
Well, the source sums it up beautifully. It says that nothing dramatic or loud happened. There were no big public victories. There were only quiet habits forming and small observations adding up.
Her strength wasn't this big gift she was given. It was accrued.
It was accrued, slowly, through persistent, low-key effort.
That really shifts our whole perspective on how success is built. We're so used to these loud, flashy stories.
I know, and this is the opposite. The key metaphor the source uses at the end is that the strongest structures are often built slowly, brick by brick, unnoticed.
Brick by brick.
That initial quietness, that forced humility, it taught her that real strength, real endurance, is about patience and persistent effort, not about spectacle. If you can build your foundation quietly when no one is watching, it becomes almost impossible to shake when the big storms finally hit.
That is such a powerful way to look at character development, especially today, in a world that just rewards noise and visibility all the time.
It really is. It's the ultimate argument for the power of just doing the work. The mundane, daily effort. Her core foundation was laid when no one was clapping. No one was even looking.
So we want to leave you, our listener, with that idea, with this understanding of quiet strength and purposeful building. We've seen how Anvika's life was shaped by silence, by consistency, by a focus on utility over decoration.
And if great strength really is built slowly, quietly, by all those unnoticed efforts piling up over time, that raises a pretty important question for you to think about.
If you look at your life, your schedule, your day-to-day right now, what is the essential unnoticed habit you are currently building? That seemingly small, quiet, maybe even boring action that will ultimately define the strength of your future foundation.